Well, I don't have a lot of updates. The one big one, I think, obviously, Gideon flew home with us, walked on the plane, and had a smile on his face like he always does. And from there, what's moving forward, I don't really know. We'll have to, it'll be later in the week and some things like that. We can give you some updates at another point in time. But to be honest with you, I don't know. For those that were there after the game, hopefully sensed even a greater disappointment from me, and maybe even than other games. And I think that just in the fact that first half in particular of seeing things and growth and the things that we wanted to be able to see from us as a football team, right? I mean, complimentary ball and back and forth, and then the second half not being that was really difficult. And obviously losing is always difficult, but I just think in the way that which we played in the first half and then the way that which we played the second half, it was hard. It was disappointing, and I wanted to make sure our guys understood that and knew that too. That there is no silver lining in the fact that hey, you played well in the first half but didn't come out the second half. And so some of that was just making sure our guys understand that there's got to be a killer instinct when you put yourself into some situations that you want to be in, meaning get the game the second half, get the game the fourth quarter. We've got to find ways to be able to get better, close things out, and win games. Whether they're obviously against a great opponent like Indiana was and the second-ranked team in the country, but in general, just how you need to finish things, and that was disappointing. But nonetheless, it didn't forget to remind, they played their butts off, and they did a lot of things that we need to do to be successful and need to grow to get better. It's going to come down to making some plays. And I think in the second half in particular last week, they made a hell of a lot of plays and we did not. And so we've got to find ways to put our guys in positions. And when they have those opportunities, we've got to make plays in order to win football games.
Luke, I know there's 2 games left this season, but as you evaluate quarterback as a whole, it's obviously been uneven this year for a variety of reasons. But what do you feel like you need out of quarterback play moving forward for the future, whether he's on the roster now or not, to feel confident moving forward?
Well, first of all, we have to have a group that's going to be competitive, and I mean that in ways to make each other better. It's been a really tough situation the last 3 years for us in that room. And I'm not saying that it's not like that. A lot of places in college football, just that the hard to develop that room with as much turnover as you can have in that room, whether it's bringing a guy in for 1 year or a guy leaving after 1 or 2 years. But I know this, we have to find some consistency in what we're doing in that room. And consistency gives you a chance when something happens, when a guy gets hurt, when a guy goes down, that the next guy stepping up can take and help grow the team and the offense in particular. And so it has been an Achilles heel. There's no doubt about it. But moving forward, we have to find consistency. We have to find depth. And some of that might be in some youth as well. And so the last few weeks of the season, that's what we got to see if we can figure out and see if we can help develop in Carter. And then we need to be able to move forward once the season ends.
Darien Dupree, assuming if Gideon's not able to play, this might be an opportunity for him to get some more work. Two-parter. One, as far as growth, what have you seen from him this year? And two, how valuable might a chance to be a guy that gets more carries in the game and get more run? How valuable might that be for a guy?
Well, I think every guy in the program has to take the opportunities that are presented to them. We all wish and want to be, have those chances, but you got to be ready when those chances, come. And I think that this is a great example of that. And Darien was a guy who was playing early in the year, got hurt, was out for maybe 6 or so weeks, and really just last week, the week before last, was cleared on Friday to take a few snaps. And so he got a few snaps in the game a couple weeks ago. Was going to get a few more snaps in this past week's game. And then obviously what happened with Gideon, he had to go in there and kind of, the second half and, kind of foot the load. And then going into this week, he's a guy that's going to have a greater opportunity to not just be a guy that probably bounces in and out of there, but a guy that, might have a greater opportunity to be the guy taking the snaps as we start the game. And I think all those opportunities, guys got to be able to run with, and whatever that means, like I said, he's been down for a few weeks, and so that's not always the easiest thing, is to get thrust right back into it. but that's part of the game. So he'll have a great opportunity. We need him to, continue to grow and, be at the position that he was, I think, at the beginning of the year, where it was a battle with him and Dylan. And, even going into that first game, we'll see how those guys are rolling to see, who continues to get more of the carries. But it's going to be a great opportunity for him.
Just going back to the quarterback spot, you said what you need from that position. What have you seen from Carter so far that you like, and what do you see where you need more room for growth?
Well, it's easier to point out the room for growth. There's a consistency. There's taking care of the football that we've talked about. It's being able to get the ball down the field that we know that we have to give him opportunities, but he's got to be able to be smart with those opportunities. But I think what we can honestly say is he's a joy to coach. Like, sometimes you don't know that when a guy's your scout team quarterback for 6, 7, 8 weeks. And, even through camp, you didn't get to see a whole lot of those things. And I'm not saying they don't get coached, but, to be in a position where you see what the guy, how he reacts, responds on a daily basis. So I know this, talking with Kenny even, last week and even last night, he's just been excited about his attitude every day coming in, his willingness to recognize mistakes, open to obviously the coaching, the good, hard, tough coaching, and wanting to get better. So I think all those things we need to be able to continue to see from him. I think we know this, that the moment's not too big. I don't think he shies away from, or gets nervous when, they line up 6, 7 up front there. And that's not something you probably can teach somebody in a short amount of time. But there's a consistency that we got to continue to expect from him, and he's got to continue to grow with.
Luke, you could use Gavin Lam down the stretch here, and he could still maintain his red shirt. Have you given thought to opening that competition back up?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that this week very well could be an option. Last week going into it, just knowing that, by nature, Gavin has a little bit more pop in his leg, and if we were put in a situation where we needed something that was outside of even Vacos's maybe reach, that he would be an option. I would have told you early in the year that when those last 4 games, or in the situation, that Gavin would be the kickoff guy. But Vacos has done a great job with kickoffs this year. So I think it'll be one of those things this week that we'll be able to create a little bit more competition and see what we need to do as we go into Saturday.
Coach, we talked a little bit on Saturday about how Daryl's been somebody that's been around for a long time but has kind of grown in this role. Has Ben Barton kind of done a little bit similarly in the last season or so, and just how has he been so consistent on that D-line?
Well, obviously, probably 6th year, and being a guy that's, mature beyond his years, whether he's married and building his own home someplace, I'm not exactly sure where, but he has been as big a staple for us in the last 2 years up front as anybody, and this year in particular. I know that maybe he doesn't get the stats that Daryl had, like 2.5 sacks from last week, and maybe not the celebrations that DP has, but nobody's been more consistent. Nobody has meant more to that up front, and in particular, I think where we struggled last year, in particular interiorly, as we got late in the year with the injuries that we had. Ben kind of stepped up and showed some leadership ability, and this year he's grown with that. And I don't think Ben's done playing football, and I don't just mean the next 2 games. I think that there aren't many guys out there that are 6'6", 330 pounds that enjoy to do what he does, and so he's been an incredible staple for us. But he's even been a greater kind of leadership piece as we've kind of struggled and battled through this whole entire season.
Look, a lot of seniors are going to be playing their last game here at Camp Randall on Saturday. We're part of your transition to coaching here. Just what's been the message to them, as maybe the wins have been where you guys want, but just what they've meant to you in the program?
I mean, everybody has a specific little role in where they've been here for 1 year or 3 years or 6 years. And so it's hard to kind of separate, right? I mean, it's not like, hey, okay, we're going to take some time each and every day here to sit down with each guy. And man, there's quite a few of them that could line up to be their last, guaranteed home game. So they've all meant a lot. I think that more than anything, I don't want to say you're old school, those guys that have been here for 6 years, like Ben Barton or Daryl Peterson, who's been here for 5, and a lot of those guys, Preston, and yeah, they deep down inside, that's the way I always envisioned college football to look like, and maybe the way that I went about it. But nonetheless, I think every one of them have, a part in what it is that we're doing, whether it's, been great success or what exactly that they wanted it to be. they're still 18 to 22-year-olds, maybe a little bit older in some cases. They're still, young men probably grown into grown men. And so I think this whole entire experience and seeing them, whether it's through 1 year or 3 years, is continues to mean a lot to me and I think every coach in this program. And so senior day is always one of those ones that's a little bit more difficult. Just knowing what guys have put in to get to where they are. It's just a little bit different nowadays, right? Because there might be a few that have been here for 6, a few that have been here for 5, and a lot that's been here for 1 or 2. And nonetheless, all of them I think are really important.
Going back to evaluating Carter, what specifically when you're looking at a true freshman maybe is different than when you're kind of evaluating an older quarterback, and how is kind of your philosophy with true freshman quarterbacks?
I don't know that I had a philosophy on true freshman quarterback. I think even Carter's a unique one too, because a lot of times your true freshman quarterback has been your third quarterback the whole year, or maybe even your backup quarterback the whole year. So he's been in the mix. He's been in those meetings. He's had an expectation of growth, knowing that there could be an opportunity right around the bend. His has been a little bit different, man. He's been expected to be somebody different every week, and as far as a scout team quarterback. And so the last few weeks, he's been thrust into a situation where, hey, now we're asking you to be yourself. We're asking you to be what our team needs you to be. So it's been an incredible growth for him. We still need to continue to see him grow and doing the things that a quarterback does when the lights are on, and has a lot to do with taking care of the football. That has a lot to do with managing and understanding the game, and that's has a lot to do with taking what's there. I think always as a young quarterback, for us as coaches and for him, we have to kind of hone in on what his strengths are, and we have to give him an opportunity to use his strengths to the best of his ability, and then obviously put him in the situations and give him the situations that we think he can handle. That's not the easiest thing as not only a true freshman quarterback, but a true freshman quarterback that's probably only been in the mix for the last 3 weeks. So each and every week there's an incredible amount of growth, and that's what I said. I know Coach Guyton has said it to me. I don't spend every winking moment with him like Coach Guyton does, but he's talking about it. What a joy it's been the last few weeks of just seeing, how he's kind of handled the whole situation and his growth even in the last 3 weeks.
Kind of talking about development. I know I've asked you some deeper questions about the philosophy within college football recently. I got one more.
Okay.
But I have a
We'll
feeling
see if we'll answer it.
Yeah. I have a feeling that, like almost every football coach in America is going to say that they run or they have a developmental program. But as you said, football itself is a developmental sport. But when you hear a program's a developmental program, just what's that definition to you, and just what are the benchmarks?
Well, I guess it has changed a little bit of my mindset. Football's still developmental, right? I mean, just the nature of it. That's why guys can't leave and go to the NFL until they've been out of school for 3 years. Just the nature of what the game is, and but I think for us it's a little bit different. To not be able to contribute as a young guy is going to be much more difficult. Whether it's in our program, I think in a lot of the major programs around the country, and so. What that development means is doesn't mean 2.5 years probably anymore. It means you better be able to develop it within a year. You better be able to provide some value a lot sooner than maybe we ever expected, 10 years ago or 5 years ago. And so there's a growth. I think that kids coming out of high school now got to understand and recognize that the beautiful thing about what football was it could be a 5-month sport, right? You could play baseball, and you could wrestle, and you could play basketball, and you could play 3 sports. And I still love the guys that do play 3 sports, but if you're not developed enough to be able to walk on a football field within the first 6 months that you're there, I think it's going to be difficult. And I do think that there's a difference between linemen in particular, O linemen and D linemen, as opposed to everybody else within the program, and I think that's not going to change. So the idea of guys playing 3 sports is what you love, but if they aren't constantly developing themselves as a football player, even in the high school levels, they better be uniquely different than 99% of everybody else in the country, because the expectation coming into programs like these is you better be able to find a way to get yourself on the field.
You mentioned Preston as one of the seniors during the game, not during the game, but in the injury report. Sorry, he was listed as out for the season for the first time. Do you think he's done here? Is that
I got no idea. I mean, those are some of those things that you know, every single day we're looking at what the next day brings. And so are there some opportunities and chances? I mean, I don't know what the NCAA is going to do in the next, 3 months, right? I mean, there's waivers out there for all different kinds of things. And so, what options are out there for some of these guys that, that maybe could continue to play college football? I'm not sure. We've kind of gone through one this year, right? And one that we haven't seen come to fruition. And it's been very disappointing in that. So to spend a whole lot of time thinking about, what's going to be available, next year with some of these guys, whether what's going to be changed through the NCAA, I don't know. I know that there's a lot of guys that are going to be playing their last guaranteed opportunity in Camp Randall this Saturday, and we're going to celebrate them.
Look, we've talked before about the middle eight and how important that is in swinging games, and that's been a real struggle throughout the year. Just have you been able to pinpoint some of the things that have,
Has it been?
It's
Is it
like 58 to
statistically?
14, yeah.
Okay.
What are some of the things that have
That would be
contributed
the third
to?
quarter probably.
Okay.
But yes, I don't know. I'd like to say that, in particular, I thought we've done a decent job at the end of the first halves. It's coming out the second half that we haven't done as well. And some of that is we've lost the coin toss and not been what we want it to be, where we can actually get the ball to start the second half. And some of it is, like I said, like last week, our defense goes out there and, in a, not say a tough situation, but in a situation where we really need you guys to step up and kind of get this second half going, and we didn't. We gave up a big play on 3rd and 8, and then we weren't able to, at least hold them to a field goal in the red zone. And so, yeah, those things, continue to show up. That's where we got to, I think that's where that killer instinct, that competitive spirit, and I'm not saying it's not on us as coaches and making some adjustments. I'm not saying that. But just as we come out in those second halves, in some of these games where we've done a good job in the first half of putting ourselves in a position, we have to do a better job in the second half. And we haven't done a great job of that. But that's something where we're still growing. That has to do with us as coaches, but also has to do with the leadership within both sides of the ball.
Just going back to Jake's question, you were talking about 6 months and said it's a little different for offensive linemen and defensive linemen in terms of development. How much time can they generate? How is that?
I don't
changed
have
from
a
previous years?
a new matrix on that. I think that, like a lot of guys, it's easy to develop your body. It's easier as a big guy. We know when you walk in the door, you're going to get stronger. You're going to get bigger. With your 265 pounds as an offensive lineman, I know that in a year, Coach Brady can get you to 300 pounds. But to think that you're going to develop the mindset, that you're going to develop a different competitive spirit and change what's inside their chest, that's something that takes a little bit more time. And that's why I'm saying, guys that walk in the door, they got to know what they're signing up for. And this is big time ball. And I think more than anything that I'm perfectly fine with getting a guy from 265 to 300 or from 245 pounds to 285 pounds to play defensive line. But to think that we're going to have to completely make an overhaul and create some toughness inside them and make them, a different type of man, that takes a lot of time. And, when trust in an environment, if you don't change within 6 months, if that's not the nature of you, it's going to be really difficult to play at this level.
Luke, this might be putting the cart before the horse to some degree with Gideon, because he's going to have to be cleared physically, right? And you're going to want to go out and see how he responds to that. But is there a mental part of this where when you've been through something so potentially traumatic that you have to see where he's
I
at
don't
there?
know. Yeah, you don't know. Every guy handles things a little bit different. To see how he was as he walked on the plane, to see how he was even when he was on the field. All he could say was sorry. He's on the field, in pain and saying sorry. And then he gets on the plane walking in, and he first stops and says he's sorry, because more than anything, he don't want to let his teammates down. So, can that overhaul if he has the ability to play? Yeah, I think that mentally, people that see something bigger than just themselves, I think they can. We'll see. Obviously, that, like we've said before, and I haven't done a good enough job, is we got to protect guys from themselves. That you hope that that's who they are and that's how they are, and then you got to be smart with them based on whatever the situation. But I don't. I think people that have a competitive killer instinct, they don't. We all know when we put a helmet on, there's a lot of things that we're taking into consideration, and I know you could say it's different. Christian Allegro breaks his arm and goes out and continues to play. I know that's different, but it's not. I still think that guys that have that mindset that want to do it, that they aren't held back by something that's happened to them in the past.
Coach, I know you guys have been ravaged by injuries this season, and you've talked about evaluating everything when it's all said and done. How much do you plan on looking at the strength and conditioning program in the off season, or do you think it's just a lot of bad luck?
No, you can't just chalk it up to bad luck. Coach Brady and I have talked about that over and over again. I do think when you start to look at things and say, okay, is there something that's showing up? Is it soft tissue issues? Is it hamstrings? Is it stingers? Things that that you think that you can train a little bit different. Unfortunately, we've had knees and shoulders, and I'm not. There's not something that you've pinpointed. Maybe you walked in the door and had a lot of hip surgeries, and that was something we said, okay, we got to look at the way we train. I do think that we, when you have older group of guys, Coach Brady and I have talked about this. I think we need to train them a little bit different, almost more like pros. And so, if there's anything we know that's going to be different as we move forward, as we, January, older guys will train in a different way. I think that things are going to be more important to us than, maybe getting a mat drill in there in mid-January and February as it is to, okay, what does this guy specifically in particular need, so that we can make sure that he's ready for, March, April, May, and then obviously the following season.
Illinois kind of had an interesting season where they had some really lopsided losses, but then some lopsided wins as well. Just what stands out about how they play and kind of the physicality that seems to be one of their hallmarks?
Yeah, no, I think that they, again, they've had some of those situations. I can't pinpoint and say what it is. I know this, that they're a good football team, and I think they were in the top 10 early in the season. And it's not like they've lost their quarterback. It's not like they've lost something specifically that has hurt them. I just think they've had to ride a little bit of the roller coaster. And, I think that they're a very sound football team. I think their quarterback in particular, Altmaier, gives them an opportunity, a chance to be successful in every game. He can throw it. He can run it. I think he's the catalyst to what it is that they've done and what they do. And, they challenge you defensively because they'll jump in and out of the bare front, and they'll get on you in man. And so it's not like they're going to change based on whatever, hey, well, we won last week and really, really big, so we're going to do no, they're consistent. That's why they're a good football team. They just continue to grow, and they don't let, a lopsided loss make them think that they need to change something. We gave up so many points against Washington, so we're going to change our defense. No, that's not the case. And that's where you see the consistency, why they, when they're at the end of the year, I think they're playing their best ball.
Luke, you and Brett bring probably the same type of energy, the same type of intensity to the sidelines. What are you looking forward to the most?
I don't know him that well. I guess you could say we both were D linemen. I don't study the sideline. I don't study what he does. I know that they're a very consistent football team. And when you can see guys that play fundamentally sound, you can see guys that play consistently from week in to week out. You can see guys even in lopsided, maybe wins or losses, that they still play with the effort and energy. Then, yeah, you know that, there's good leadership in the program. There's a culture that's been created there. How he does it, how they do it, I have no idea. I just know that it shows up.
Going back to your seniors, you got guys like Owen Arnett, Grover Bortolotti, who've been here for a while that, they haven't maybe had the headlines or gotten into those primary roles. But what's the value of guys like that to a program and in this new era of
you can't even put a value, a dollar or I don't know how you would list a value for what those guys bring. And I mean that because through transition, through transfers and things like that, those are guys that get lost sometimes not in the mix, but they get lost in your guys' world, right? They just continue to do what they've done. They're the guys that are truly what development looks like. And I know this, where we have been this year with, just the injuries and different things, we wouldn't be able to field a team that would have any chance if we didn't have guys like that. And, there are three phases of this football game, and a lot of those guys like Owen and Grover don't get a whole lot of play maybe on the offense and the defense, but a third of that game and obviously what keeps us in a lot of these things is their ability to be core special teams guys. and guys that if you need them, they're there. So it's hard to put a value on it. I think it's even a greater value than what it was, 6, 7, 8 years ago, just because the nature of what you're trying to continue to build upon, meaning cultures of things that if you don't have those kind of guys, especially in a tough year, boy, things can get sideways really, really quick.